Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona with producer Bobby helping us out as we'll get you ready for the Federico Tesio, which is a win and you're in for the Preakness. But before we get to the Preakness, first stop, Kentucky Derby. That one is coming soon. We have our Kentucky Derby packages available for you right now. You can save up to 39% on expert picks, data, and betting strategies. Head to shop.drf.com and get ready to win big. Let's take a look at the field for the Federico Tesio. Okay, David, I got to give a little bit of a shout out here to a great Italian guy who, when you look up Federico Tesio, he has been called the only genius to ever operate in the breeding world and the greatest single figure in the history of Italian racing. I love those quotes there for the man this race was named after. And this one, I think, has been now about 9 or 10 years where it's been a win and you're in for the Preakness. So we'll see a horse or two in here come Preakness Saturday in just about a month or so now as we're getting closer and closer to the Derby. David, what are your thoughts on this field of 10?
Yeah, it's a really intriguing group, and I'll be interested to see if any of these horses do go on to the Preakness. A couple of them were briefly on the Kentucky Derby trail. Surfside Moon and Studley Do Right did participate in some Kentucky Derby points races. Obviously, their connections are now shifting gears to maybe point to the Preakness by running in this spot, but they're facing a pretty intriguing group, including some up-and-comers that appear to have potential.
Let's take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector and see what they think out on the lead here. Doesn't surprise me. Kentucky Outlaw has been pretty quick in both starts. You have Pay Billy, who has been forwardly placed. I don't necessarily know if he wants to be on the lead. I think his best would be just tracking off of it down towards the inside. Horse like Right Wing Runner showed a little more speed last time out in his first start going long. Anything in here surprise you when you take a look at the projector?
No, Kentucky Outlaw obviously has a lot of early speed, so he's going to find himself in front, provided a clean break in here. And we'll just see if anybody really pushes him and whether or not Kentucky Outlaw can get the 9 furlong distance, because I think stamina is going to be a question that a lot of these horses have to answer.
Let's meet the field here, starting with the number 1, Surfside Moon, who actually comes out of a pretty good effort, David, that we can show right here. This is a runner-up effort in the Withers, and it sort of came out of nowhere from a speed figure standpoint. This is a horse who had been running much lower speed figures, and then in his first start at 3, it was also his first start off of a layoff in about 3.5 months, and he runs second here behind Captain Cook, well clear of the third place finisher Omaha, and he earns a 90 buyer speed figure that kind of jumps off the page when you compare it to the rest of the field. So what do we do with a horse like this who wasn't really running at that form prior to that, but then in his first start as a 3-year-old jumped up with a much better effort? Which one of the horses are we going to expect? Like the one that we saw more in the 2-year-old season, or the one coming off that big effort?
Yeah, for me, watching that replay back was frustrating and validating at the same time, because I really liked Surfside Moon in
Yeah.
that Withers. He was my best bet of the day at 33-1, and he
Yep.
runs by far the best performance of his career, but still has to settle for second to Captain Cook, who just happened to be a talented horse that was contesting that early season Derby prep. I know the winner, Captain Cook, came back and disappointed in the Wood Memorial next time as the favorite, but it's not like he regressed that much on the buyer speed figure scale. He got a 94 in the Withers and only stepped back 3 points to get a 91, finishing fourth in the Wood Memorial. And the third place finisher Omaha came back to validate the buyer that he got in the low 80s in the Withers. So that number of 90 does check out for Surfside Moon. And the reason I liked him going into that race, is because this is a horse that strikes me as a pure dirt router. They ran him on the turf going long a couple of times just to get the distance into him. And his one prior dirt route, the Laurel Futurity, he got a nightmare trip in that race. Yeah. And is way better than that result. So I think he's a horse that has talent. I will note that he came up with a temperature coming out of the Withers. That's why he did not run back in the Wood Memorial. So the trainer, Chuck Lawrence, kind of shifting gears to now point towards the Preakness, maybe competing in this Federico Tesio, but I do think this is a runner with real talent.
Yeah, that would be the only concern, right? You have a little bit of a layoff, like 3.5 months, then you run a big race, then you have a couple months again following that. You'd love to see if he could have maybe strung the races together, but certainly coming off of that effort, that's a big effort to build off. Right Wing Runner tried long for the first time. He finished second. He was close up second. He was just off the leader. He chased a Baby Dukes basically all the way around. At one point, he actually moved to the lead. David put his nose in front. Then he kind of hung a little bit. That was his first start going long. You could just see it. It sort of felt that way, like he was getting a little bit tired as the horse battled back on the inside. What do we do with the stakes placed Right Wing Runner?
Yeah, I saw the same things in that replay, Gino. Those were just some really tired horses going that mile and the 16th distance over a very deep park surface in early March. So he's got to prove that he really has the stamina to go now a little further, try the 9 furlongs in this Federico Tesio. And the winner of that race, Baby Dukes, he came back and was third in the private terms. And we've got the top 2 finishers in the private terms that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So I'm not sure those form lines really stack up.
Arcadian is the next one up. Just feels kind of tough to love off the last two, where beaten 22 lengths, beaten 8 lengths, did completely miss the break sprinting last time out. But now you're sprinting, at Aqueduct going 6 furlongs, now stretching out to a mile and an eighth on the dirt. Could you make a case for this one?
I can make a little bit of a case. This is a horse that I get is hard to like off his last 2 performances, but there are some interesting things going on with this horse. He was with these connections when he began his career with Greg Sacco. They lost him for $20,000 when he broke the maiden in a maiden claimer, but then they claimed him back 2 starts later for $50,000 after he improved a little bit for different connections, and they stepped him right up into a stakes race. So clearly they have revised their opinion on this horse, Greg Sacco and the owners, that they think he's got a little more talent than he's shown on the track, and now they're pressing on in another stakes race for a horse that sold for very little money at auction before he even ran. This horse has a big pedigree by McLean's Music. He's from this regal Damside family that traces back to that blue head mare Courtly D, and just stakes winners all through the female family. So maybe it's taken him a little bit of a while to come around, but I do think routing, going 2 turns on the dirt, is what this horse is ultimately going to want. And I do respect the confidence being shown by a sharp barn.
Love when there are horses that aren't on my radar that you can make a good case for. Bold Diversion is the next one up. Bold Diversion steps up after winning 2 of the last 3. Does have the lowest buyer top in the field. Feel like he's probably likely to be forward in this race with the running style that we've seen. Some of your thoughts on Bold Diversion?
Yeah, he's been improving steadily over the course of his career, but he broke his maiden at $12,500 maiden claimer. He's competed against weaker company in both starts since then for the new barn. Just feels like he's going to have a big class test here that I'm not sure he's going to be up to passing.
David, horses like Kentucky Outlaw are always tricky reads for me, especially horses like this at parks in particular at that course, because you'll see some horses like this that are like freaky at parks that seem like they run off and they can get the lead. And he's kind of been like that. Like, he's really impressive when you watch his races. He's full of run. I kind of have a feeling he might be able to get away from this grouping here. I just don't know how good he really is overall. So he stretched out to a mile from 6.5. And they were really, really grabbing a hold of this horse, trying to slow him down to make sure that he was going to get this distance. And he's still a little bit green here. I think there's a lot of ability. I just don't really know like who he's faced or if this is the right spot right now. But feel like there's something there with Kentucky Outlaw. How do you think he fits with this group?
In a lot of ways, he is the key to this race, because if he can get to the front and slow down the pace and show that level of talent against tougher competition, then he might just lead this field on a merry chase. I fall more into the category of being skeptical of who he's faced in those races at Parks, Gino. I'm always a little skeptical of form from that track, and kind of looking through the fields of those that he beat. I don't think a whole lot of those horses. I get it. He's been visually impressive. Last time out, I like to look at the Time Form US past performances, which do color code pace scenarios, red or blue, indicating a fast or slow pace. All the fractions for his last race color coded blue, indicating that he got to set a slow pace. He might get another one here. I'm just a little skeptical he can do it against the way tougher field.
Number 6, Studley Do Right, was a multiple stakes winner at 2. Speed figures wise hasn't really progressed, but he's been facing some pretty solid company. You see a lot of horses in his recent running lines that are either going to be running in the Kentucky Derby or were trying to get qualified for the Kentucky Derby. So a little bit of class relief in this spot. He's also proven at Laurel. And I mean, overall, he does have some of the better races in this group. I just don't know if he's necessarily moving in the right direction and trending upwards, while you have some of these other horses that feel like they're really improving right now, David. So he's kind of like a measuring stick. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him run well in here and hit the board. But from picking a horse on top or betting a horse to win in this race, I just thought others were more exciting.
Yeah, this is a horse that I've had a love-hate relationship. I've tried him a number of times and have been right, I think, once in the Nashua, but mostly wrong about him, having been a fan of him going all the way back to the beginning of his career. He's just a little bit random. He's hard to trust. And I'm also a little skeptical that he really wants to go 9 furlongs around
Yeah.
2 turns. He is this big, long striding son of Nyquist, but he's just kind of lacked the finish that I want to see in his races going this far. So I think he can get a piece of this, Gino, but I didn't really view him as a win candidate.
Sacred Thunder finished second behind Pay Billy last time out, and then actually finished third behind Pay Billy 2 starts back. So has been in stakes races, has been hitting the board in stakes races in the last couple, but will need to improve on common rival Pay Billy, who's just a couple spots to his outside. And I keep mentioning those two horses. They're totally different as far as running styles are concerned, right? Sacred Thunder is probably going to drop back a little bit more. I think probably going to make one more, a little bit more of a late run. What do we do with Sacred Thunder here?
I mean, you got to respect this horse's consistency, versatility, and his durability. I mean, he's made
Yeah.
12 starts so far. He's now making his 13th career start in just April of his 3-year-old season. So he's had a busy schedule, but he's so consistent and he just steps up to the plate every time and gives you that consistent effort, really, regardless of what distance they're asking him to run. So he's stretching out to 1.125 for the first time, but he's conquered everything so far and done it with fairly flat speed figures. So it feels like a horse that you know what you're going to get from. Just as you were indicating, watching those last couple of races, I don't really see the excuses for why Pay Billy beat him by 3 lengths. That's probably just a better horse.
Happily Delusional is a fantastic name for a horse, but he's a horse who was chasing the speed of Kentucky Outlaw last time out. Maybe he gets a better trip in here if there's some more speed to set up, right? That's a tough trip for him, chasing a lone speed horse who wins that way. He seems like he's moving in the right direction. Can you build a case for Happily Delusional?
He's another one that is at least improving in every start on the Beyer speed figure scale, running a career best last time. But as you said, he was no match for Kentucky Outlaw in that race. He's going to have to run way faster to beat a group like this. So just feels like this is a pretty tall order for this park shipper.
Pay Billy, we've mentioned a few times before. He's in really nice form. He's won 3 of his last 4, and the one of those 4 that he didn't win, he lost by a nose. They kept him a little wider out on the track last time out in the private terms just to kind of keep him off the pace a little bit. I think so they didn't get caught up in a battle, and it actually worked out pretty well. He was able to relax a little bit out there in the middle of the track, and then once they set him down for the drive, I thought he drew off pretty nicely. You start going through his form overall, David, as we see the stretch run here of the private terms. He's proven at Laurel. He's a 3-time winner here. You go back to the race where he didn't really run all that well at Laurel. It was against a horse named Best Friend Rocket, who came out of that race and has won at Oaklawn Park with an 82 Beyer. He actually ran in the Arkansas Derby, so he lost to a pretty nice horse that day. I think his body of work makes a lot of sense in here. What do you think about Pay Billy?
Yeah, he just feels like a horse that has really turned the corner as a 3-year-old, and I like each of his last 4 races. And I know
Yeah.
the one loss 2 back might not look so much on paper, finishing a nose behind Barbadian Runner, but that's a race when you go back and watch the replay. Barbadian Runner uses his turn of foot to run past Pay Billy in the stretch and actually opens up like 3/4 of a length on him. But Pay Billy showed a lot of grit to come back and make it a nose decision at the wire. So this horse is game. He's got talent, and it feels like more distance just works for him. Something I've noticed about the progeny of Improbable is that they just really want to go long, and this horse seems like he's improving as they start to write some longer races.
Rounding out the field, Just a Fair Shake is lightly raced. He's 2 for 3, and he does have a loss, but finished third in the Laurel Futurity, where he was behind Studley Do Right and faced some other rivals in that race. He had a good start in his most recent race. He took up a bit. He was tight going into the turn. He had to go back to 5th or 6th. He was 4 lengths off. I thought he moved out pretty wide in between horses up the challenge. There was a lot going on in his last race. His speed figures are very, very light, David, in comparison with this group. I feel like he's a little bit better just in watching his races than what they might suggest. I don't think he's quite good enough to win a race like this, but I actually think he might be kind of a fun big price that could hit the board and maybe outrun his odds here. He's drawn way to the outside. I think he has a little bit of versatility to him too. He showed more positional speed when he won his career debut and then came from a little bit off the pace, more mid-pack last time out. What do you think about Just a Fair Shake rounding out this group?
I think we've got a pretty similar take on him. He seems like a horse that might ultimately be going places, but I wonder if this is the spot for him to
Yeah.
shine. He's drawn a tough post position. He's got that one race under his belt. He's going to have to run a lot faster than that now, second off the layoff. But he is coming out of that Laurel Futurity that we talked about earlier, where he didn't have the same trouble as Surfside Moon, but he did get a very wide trip that day. And we've seen some horses come back out of that race to improve their speed figures. And one thing I'll note about his last race, Gino, watching the stretch run, his girth strap came unloose and was just dangling between his legs for the entire stretch. So maybe that was why he looked a little unfocused in the late stages of that race. I think he wants distance. We'll just see if this is the spot for him to shine.
Completely agree. That was his first start in 6 months, so maybe he can take a step forward off of that. Might be a lot to ask here, though, at this particular time. We move to selections. David, set us up. How'd you stack him in the Federico Tesio?
I've been a fan of the number one Surfside Moon, and I don't think he's going to be some really interesting price in this race, but this is a horse that I do think has talent. I don't think his last race is some fluke, and if he gets a little bit of pace to close into, I think he's going to be finishing well in here, but we'll see how that pace works out, and I think that's a reason why we both have the number 9 Pay Billy in there, because he just feels like a horse that can make his own good trip.
Yeah, I felt like the two horses to beat probably were Surfside Moon and Studley Do, right? They're horses who maybe you don't get a whole lot of value on in here. I'm kind of curious to how the rest of the race gets bet. Maybe a horse like Kentucky Outlaw or a Pay Billy, you could get some value on. I'm not exactly sure how much, but I thought this race was a really fun race to handicap. And if you missed, we also previewed the Clark, which was another really good race on the Laurel card. You could check us out right here on the YouTube looking at that one. So it's a big Saturday at Laurel Park. We wish you the best of luck on Saturday.